you don't really question the system. You just go with what is there and you never ask why at 99.7% I'm not able to get into a program I want. You just say maybe I'm not good enough. In fact, I got 100 and then I would have got it. And then you settle for what you get. And when you come from a docile middle class family, you neither question family, neither question system, neither question the state. And this is 1987, 40 years after so-called political freedom. We still hadn't got a socio-economic freedom. 80 kilometers from the city of Mysuru, a young Indian woman who shouldn't even have got pregnant at 14, can't even call her woman a child, gets pregnant and delivers her own baby in the middle of the night. And while delivering the placenta, she soils the only sari, washes her sari in the middle of the night, puts it on the hut for it to dry, and is waiting for the sun to come out to wear it back again. So that hit me so hard, I felt like giving up. I think the whole concept of the Capacity Building Commission came from the Prime Minister's vision of how to build a new India, where he genuinely believed that this country needs every Indian to participate.
Hey listeners, welcome back. This is Inspire Someone Today. This is also the second year anniversary of Inspire Someone Today. August is when we launched Inspire Someone Today 2020. Celebrating this second year anniversary, we are running 4 back-to-back episodes. And this is also the Independence Week. We are celebrating India's 75th Independence Day, called as Amrit Mahotsav. And I couldn't have asked for a better person, better inspirer than Dr. Balu. While this podcast is about creating ripples of inspiration, here is a man who has created ponds of it. His life has been that of a penance with a single most mission of building a resurgent India. It's my absolute pleasure and joy to welcome Dr. Balu on Inspire Someone Today. Balu sir, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, and a pleasure to be on this podcast.
And I would want to start off with then 99.6% wasn't good enough for you. And how did this shape your life journey?
When you're 17 and you come from a typical Indian middle class family from a city like Bangalore, like I did, possibly the only aspirations that your family knows and shapes you with the generation I belong to was get into medicine or get into engineering and go abroad. So that was thought when my siblings were already abroad, and that was the usual career path for most of us. And that's how we were all trained to think. Those are the typical middle class aspirations. And I was no different. I wanted to get into IITs, and possibly IITs didn't want me to get into them. So I didn't qualify. And those days, NITs, as they're called now, were called the engineering colleges, the RECs, and computer science had just made an entry. Infosys, I don't think, was yet established. Computers were just coming into India. We just heard what a computer looks like. So I was really fascinated with computer science. And applied to NIT Suratgal, REC Suratgal as well then known, and I was waitlisted as one. So they just started the program and there was one general merit seat. So very disappointed. That's the age when you don't really question the system. You just go with what is there, and you never ask why at 99.7% I'm not able to get into a program I want. You just say maybe I'm not good enough. In fact, I should have got 100 and then I would have got it. And then you settle for what you get. And when you come from a docile middle class family, you neither question family, neither question systems, neither question the state. So you just went along with the flow. And for me, at that point of time, it was you take what you get. So I just then came back and took whatever college I was offered. That was PMS Engineering College in Bangalore, and I just joined. And you go by your siblings' advice. My brother was already in regional, graduated from the regional engineering college, preaching, and he said, if you take mechanical engineering, it's sort of the foundations of engineering sciences. You can then go to any branch you want. So why don't you take mechanical? Like flying it. And that's all it meant at that point of time. I never really processed this. Am I good enough? Am I not good enough? We just took what it was, and it was what it was. That's the way it began.
And that was a very profound way of looking at things at that early age. This was Balu at 1982. Is that
Yes.
when this whole
Yeah.
incident happened? Okay.
Yes.
And that led into something else, which is what your life mission kind of came out to be, which is about the influence of Swami Vivekananda and also the making of SVYM. Again, for the benefit of our listeners, SVYM is Swami Vivekananda Youth Movement, which Dr. Balu is the founding member of that. So tell us a bit more about that.
When I got into the engineering program, and those days there was no anti-ragging act, as all of us. There's a very strong act which ensures that students don't go through the experience that I went through. But in a sense, though the incident was negative, it had the most positive impact on my life and several people's lives that I have been able to touch through SVYM. Went into college the first day, very badly ragged. So badly ragged that I never had the courage to go back to the campus next day. Then coming from a typical middle class family like I did, you didn't have enough money to go sit in a movie theater. Those days there was no OTTs or Netflix or Amazon, as you know, there's no internet itself. And you didn't have enough money to do that. At the same time, you didn't have the courage to stay at home because mothers are very intuitive people and they would know that something is wrong. So I would leave home, cycle up the second day I cycled up to the college campus, I saw a police constable standing outside. The law says that until the principal calls the constable in, he doesn't come to the campus. So it suddenly struck me, if the ragging is going to be, yesterday there was no police constable, today is a constable. Yesterday the ragging was intolerable, and so if today this guy is standing out there, it is worse enough for a police constable to be standing outside. So I'm not entering campus. On the way back in Basungudi, for those who live in Bangalore, know that there is Ramakrishna Ashram. Then I thought gates are open, green campus. Let me sit there for some time. And lovely little benches out there under the trees and shade. Nice parking for the cycle. I used to cycle. I was a very avid cyclist. So I just spent some time there for 2-3 hours. Went home and told my mother, half-day class. Colleges just started, so half-day. Did that for 2-3 days. And then I think some of the brahmacharis of the Ramakrishna Mission noticed me loitering around. They thought this guy must have come to steal some fruits. The mango season had just ended. A lot of lovely government supported trees on campus. And so I was walking around and they said, maybe this guy's come to steal some fruits. And then with sort of a desperate pretension of looking to be serious, I went and sat in the library. And 1 day, 2 days, you can pretend for 2-3 days. Then I thought, let me take a book and pretend a little more serious. And that is when I got exposed to what Swami Vivekananda wrote. Those are then in 8 volumes called The Complete Works of Swami Vivekananda. The next 2 months, pretty much read everything that he wrote. 2 small books. One was his Call to the Nation, and the other book was called To the Youth of India. I feel every young man of India should read it. Every young man of the world should read it. That changed my life. And I think I still remember on September 29th or 30th, 29th of that year, in statements that Vivekananda writes about, he says, I call every young man a traitor who, having been by people's expense, pays not the least heed to them. And statements like, I do not believe in a God or religion which cannot wipe away the widow's tears or bring a piece of bread to the orphan small. Now at 17, I think every one of us is a communist or a socialist. We think we have a magic wand and the world will be equal. I was no different. And when you read statements like this of Swami Vivekananda, you feel inspired. And statements like go from village to village, go to fisherman's hut, the cobbler's crew, stuff like that. I felt that this is the God or this is the religion I want to know, and this is how I'm going to know it, by going from village to village. And I come home. I had a telegram saying join Mysuru Medical College meeting. So to me, I then believed it, and I believe it even now. I thought it was a message from Swami Vivekananda. Because sitting in the ashram, I felt if I get a chance to do something different in my life, I'm going to live this life. And the same day you come home and you find something like this. I don't even know today's got a telegram. But those days we actually got telegrams. And so it said join Mysuru Medical College, and I thought this is what my life is destined for. And the second day I went back to the BMS college just to collect my TC and exit the college. And then went to Mysuru straight to get admitted. But for that ragging incident, but for Ramakrishna Ashram being where it was, and but for me getting introduced to Swamiji and his works, I would even feel my life would have been just a mediocre, routine life that everybody leads, maybe even worthless. That made all the difference to me.
It sounds like a very well laid out script for you how your life would shape up, right? Right from the time of you not getting that seat at REC to destiny taking you all the way to Mysore Medical College. And that led into the next big thing that you ended up doing, the launch of Swami Vivekananda Youth Movement and your fantastic work with the tribals at HD Kote and Bandipur Wildlife Sanctuary.
I would think so because I think I always believe that everybody's life is free flow. Just that we don't surrender ourselves to the higher power. And I'm a man who's got deep convictions in the divine and the way our lives are guided. If only we can just yield. If only we understand it. I'm not saying it should be an important, helpless, giving up cowardly act, but a very intelligent, very I wouldn't hesitate to use the word enlightened, but very aware sense of self-surrender, which comes with a deep sense of humility and appreciation of the divine principle. And you allow that to take control of your life, and suddenly you realize so much things get done through you. And that is what I believe. Now, looking back, I'm not saying I had this feeling every time. There were many times I felt I am doing stuff and I am the one in control and I am founder of this organization. I have built hospitals. I was pretty strong. But I think those are times Vivekananda sort of hits you on the head and reminds you that you're nobody. So I've had experiences that expose that too. So I always believe what he said. No, don't stand on a pedestal and say, here, my poor man, take my 5 cents. But consider yourself privileged that you've been having the opportunity to serve the poor man. So I think when you surrender and give yourself up to the higher cause, you suddenly realize that you become an instrument of change. And that's all we are. We are just instruments. That change is already designed. Now, I remember reading on the Swamiji writes, the Lord who gives birth, who's created the cow, and the cow which gave birth to the calf, is already pre-programmed to feed milk to it. So you don't think that you are coming here to change the world that God created. God has already got a path and destiny away, and we are just privileged to be used as instruments of change. So we are not the doer, but things get done through us.
That's a very interesting way that you put it out. We are all instruments of change. And probably in your case, you had the ability to kind of realize this because you kind of came through the works of Vivekananda. You understood what it is. For everybody else, what do you recommend for them to realize that, okay, they are the instrument of the change, that these are the things for them to do to realize what they are destined on this planet Earth to do?
I think most of us live our lives very aimlessly. We don't really stop to question ourselves. We don't stop to spend time on reflection. And my feeling is we don't ask questions of ourselves. We don't practice self-inquiry mainly because not because we don't know that how to do it or we are not wanting to do it. It's just that we are afraid of the answers we'll find. I think the more you start stopping and asking questions of yourself, a very simple question that Ramana Maharshi asked everybody to ask, who am I? And if you begin there and say, even if you don't go deep enough to say you are the Atman, at least if you say, who am I? Why am I born? What am I doing in this point of time? How am I useful to society? Simple questions like that. I think most of us are afraid to ask those questions because we're afraid of the answers we get. Because deep down, we know the answers that are there. And we just don't want those answers. So I think we go on with life. We just wander it away. We don't see our life's journey or mission as that discovery of the inner self. I would feel that if there's one message of Swami Vivekananda that really resonates with me, he says we are the makers of our own destiny. And he didn't mean it by saying that you build a great enterprise, a great company, and then say a great thing. I think what he might, deep down, what I think he might have meant is we shape our destiny of that destiny of self-discovery, destiny of discovering that you're one with the other, destiny of discovering that you're one with God himself. And I think once you set out with that conviction, that sense of purpose, I'm not saying that sense of purpose will be permanent, strong enough, all the time the same. We all go through self-doubt, we all go through ups and downs in life like we do in everything else. But then you hold on to convictions. You begin with faith. I began with the faith that Swami Vivekananda's words must be true. Though Vivekananda himself says, don't accept me as test it out, try it out. If it works, keep it, or throw it out of the window. But then he also says, start with faith. And I think that's what I have done for myself. And I would say today's young people, most importantly, like Swamiji himself says, he says, you must have faith in yourselves first. faith in yourself that you're not screwing up your life, you're not throwing it away, you're not wasting it. You actually are embarking on a journey, a great adventure. And this adventure might really take you places. And after you do the practice of self-inquiry, you also do a deep sense of reflection. I was privileged, and I was truly privileged to have been introduced to Swamiji and his works, but more importantly, to extraordinary gurus in my life. One was the one who shaped my thinking, trained me, one who gave me Diksha, my spiritual guru, Swami Vivekananda. Fortunate to have been groomed under him by him for 5 years. And the other guru of the Ramakrishna order, Swami Vivekananda, who helped me understand how to operate in the real world without losing sight of your inner purpose. I would call Vivekananda the perfect Advaitin I have known and interacted with, who lived in this world like Ramakrishna explained, being the lotus leaf in the water but not getting wet by it. And he showed me how, and he taught me that you have to do what you have to do. Well, running an organization is as Vyavaharik as it can be. It's possibly more Vyavaharik than being a householder. But then not getting affected by it and still seeing every step of what you do as yoga, converting action to something higher. And with conviction, with faith, with the belief that this is also a process of sort of purifying yourself and trying to reach closer to God. So I was privileged that I had these two extraordinary gurus in my life, and but for whom I wouldn't have been shaped into who I am.
That's interesting. For all of us who are not as privileged as you, what are some of the things that we can do, we can consider doing for us to get into this mode of self-inquiry and reflection? And if there's anything else to add on to it, do let us know about it.
It's not even something very different from what all the jnanis of the world have been saying. Practicing simple things like mindfulness, being intensely self-aware, asking very existential questions, practicing self-inquiry, a deep sense of self-inquiry, trying to go deep into the understanding of why you exist, what you exist for, and what is your sense of purpose in life. And also being constantly an observer to yourself, catching yourself every step of the way and say, am I slipping? Am I letting the ego take control? Is the I growing bigger than I? It happens to everybody. At least it happened to me, I can say. I have lost my way. And I have altered. I still remember in my own personal life, I was appointed the chair of the head of the Vivekananda chair by the Mysuru University, and I thought, wow, it's a great opportunity. I thought, oh, I must be knowing Vivekananda really well. Why would this university appoint any man like me to be the chair and the professor of Vivekananda studies? And I still remember the first day I gave a lecture, the hall was full with 300, 400 people, and Prabhu Shankara, man I admired, a literary figure, was a great friend and mentor also. He was the first chair. And he walked up to me and said, when I give speeches, 5-6 people would be there, but look at the crowd listening to you, who are the voice of Vivekananda speaks to you. It went up my head. I went to the roof and I was going back to the forest. I thought I must be really good. I must have done a lot of stuff in life. And that was a time when the then Chief Minister, Sri Veerappa Moily ji, had written a book called Kotta, where he had sort of fashioned the story around my own biography of life. And he had called me Balasubramaniam, the book itself, as the lead protagonist. So I thought I must be damn good. As Chief Minister, the state writes my biography, and former chair says you're too good. So, and it is in that instant of time, I suddenly realized that the work, the process of self-discovery and Swamiji's messages fallen by the wayside. I had done exactly what he had warned us about here. He warns about the work being less important, but I doing the work becoming more important. And I actually fallen into the exact trap that he warned about. And when that sense hits you, you suddenly realize how silly and stupid and how big a failure you are. I felt a tremendous failure. I went through depression. I said, what is this I've done to my life? All my life, I thought I'm trying to refine myself and glorify myself, and all that I had done was build my own ego and feel that I'm somebody great and big. I actually walked up to the Vice Chancellor and said, I want to resign.
Yeah, this comes as no surprise for a man who has accomplished so much that, okay, there is that divine role that has played a part in your whole journey so far.
I would simply say it is just God done through me, and that divine is a joy to just live with.
And talking about it, the journey, I think you had a big impact on the tribal community here in Karnataka. I think that in many ways became kind of a template for many such organizations across the country. Tell us a bit more about what made you kind of start this movement and what is happening today and what's the future of this tribal movement.
I didn't choose to be in a tribal area. That's the whole. Again, like I said, if I would use the word I, it was wrong. It was just chosen for me, and it all happened so beautifully. Sitting in Swami Vivekananda in this room, somebody heard about me, and actually, the International Youth Day in 1985, I think that announced or something. The first time that we celebrated, the press wrote about me, a small article saying that there is a young man who started this organization who believes he can work for India in this way. And the then Deputy Commissioner of Mysuru district, Mr. Baligar, VP Baligar, he read the article and he actually drove down to the medical college. So imagine that a Deputy Commissioner would come down to a medical college to look for a student. He met me over coffee, and I was known as even those days I was known as a very evolutionary activist in college. So I would fight tracking, I would do all this. So people thought they saw a car coming with a red light on. They thought, oh, Balu, so they stood up and somebody's come to pick him up. So the young man, the deputy commissioner, walked up to me and said, "Are you Dr. Balu?" I had not graduated yet, and then took me to coffee in medical college canteen, sat with me and said, "I read this in the paper, I didn't believe it, I want to make sure that it's true, what you plan to do." Like I said, I want to just go serve in rural India. Then he said, "Why do you want to, what does rural India mean to you?" And that was the time it hit me. All my life I'd grown up in Bangalore, and the only other city I knew was Mysuru. So I hadn't even known an Indian village, and here I am talking of serving rural India. So it's such an eye-opening, right? And we have no idea of what we're talking. Then he took me to, he said, if you really want to work, this is not the place in the city that you are not close to a city. We had already started working in a place called Chinnadagudi. He said, that's so close to the city, we don't need you there. So if you really want to do this, if you really have conviction what you believe in, I take it. District. Those days it was unified Mysuru district, a huge district. And then that's the place where you should be working. And he introduced me to another extraordinary gentleman called Nanjun Ram, who had done a survey of tribals and he actually knew all the challenges tribals faced. He sat with me from Nachalanji's room and explained to me how tribals lived. And so one day, Baligar Nanjun Rao took me along with him to introduce me to E61 and to tribals. The last 5 kilometers, there's no road even. I even joke, and even now I meet Baligar, and he's a great friend, a great supporter, and throughout his career has been somebody who stood by our work and us. And I even now tell him that you fooled me. You took me in August 87, he drove me down and it was green. Kote is a dry deciduous forest. Once the first rains fall, it's lush green. But I said, you brought me in when everything was green, and then you just told me, you'll give me land here, and I just said, yes, I have no idea what I was doing. Like I said, these are the things that things get done through. Others, how could anybody even believe that somebody at 17 would even have a chance to reach Swamiji this message? Somebody at 19 would set up an organization, get it registered, go to the income tax office. Every act that has happened in my life, from registration of the organization to securing the foreign contribution, act clearance, to every single thing that has happened, has just happened. Or going to E61 and getting that land and settling down there or working with tribals. I think the more I look back now, I can see the design that took me through every step. And so now I just feel it all happened. I would simply say that's how I went to the tribal area. And the work I started, obviously, the ego doesn't disappear overnight. I stood third in my final year in medicine, and I thought those were entrance exams, and I thought they just got, only then they'd introduced entrance exam for masters. I thought I could have easily got whatever post-graduation program I wanted. I just walked away to the forest. Everybody thought I'm a fool. My own batchmates thought this guy screwed up, he's lost his way, and he's going to the forest. Tribals thought that this guy is not even cleared his final year exam. So why would a doctor come and say? In India, we always look at it with suspicion. There must be some reason behind it. Maybe he's getting a lot of money from abroad, that's why he's coming here. Maybe he's not even a doctor, so he's just pretending to be one. All kinds of reasons. But when I went there, one incident shaped a lot of my life. I was desperate, wanting to be accepted. In fact, I write this incident in my book, Voices from the Grassroots. I say the voice that keeps me going, and it keeps me going even today. It keeps me sleepless even today. A young lady, she was the daughter of the chieftain. In those days, even now, the tribal colonies are named after the chieftain. the group of people who are his clan, who live in the colony. Sani Madaya was the name of the chieftain, and Sani Madana Hadi is the hamlet. His daughter was pregnant. So I was thrilled. I thought, okay, I can deliver this lady and I'll be accepted as a my affirmation would come only if people accepted me. So I went to Sani Madana Hadi. I still remember that day, evening around 5:36, and shocked that it was the 14-year-old child who was pregnant. And one side of me was unhappy about it, but the other side of me actually, that's a great adventure. If I can deliver this high-risk pregnancy, this is 14-year-old teenager, child will fall in love with me and say, this is God who's come to save us. And so that ego kept pushing. And I thought, okay, and I learned my obstetrics from one of the greatest professors I would call of my time, Professor Cowlgood, who was an extraordinary human being, was the most compassionate humanist I have seen in medicine. And he had told me, finally gravid, the first pregnancy takes around 24 hours for a woman to deliver. And he said, all you got to do is practice watchful expectation. So evening 6 o'clock, it's a Project Tiger area, Asia's largest elephant corridor. I thought I don't want to be trampled or eaten up by a tiger. I have to come back tomorrow morning. So I walked back that night. The next early morning, 6 o'clock, I went. I still remember I was walking by this elderly, not elderly, now she's elderly. That time the young Betapurba woman, Puttama, stopped me and said, where are you going so early in the morning? Because the elephants come to the river to drink water and go back. And she said, what are you off to so early? And she said, I'm going to go deliver Madhi. And she laughed and said, Madhi was her niece. She said, oh, you don't have to go. The child was born last. I was disappointed. Wow, this child, this 14-year-old, the baby couldn't follow the textbook and come up for 24 hours. No, the only opportunity to prove myself is gone. But I had to show something to show that I'm a doctor. So I thought I should go there and put some tension violet onto the umbilical stump and some antibiotic drops to the eye of the baby and come back. So I went to the hut of Sani Madai hamlet. Sani Madai had gone to the forest to fetch firewood to come back, heat water for the young mother to have a bath and to wash the baby. I was standing at the hut of the Sani Madai's daughter, or his house, and I could hear her inside. I knew that she's inside, and I kept asking her to come out and show me the baby, because obviously you don't enter the house without the mother's permission, the lady's permission. The lady was not responding. Try talking to somebody who doesn't even answer. It's like talking to a wall. 3-4 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then human ego took over. He said, what the hell? I'm a university ranker. I come all the way to serve you, and you can't come out and show me your baby. So in anger, I shouted in Kannada, saying that if you don't come out and show me your baby, I'm going to come into the house and see it. And her scream, that's the voice that still resonates in me, and I can't. Even now, it's a very painful story for me to narrate. She said, please don't come inside. I have nothing to wear. And this was 1987, 40 years after so-called political freedom. We still hadn't got a socio-economic freedom. 80 kilometers from the city of Mysuru, a young Indian woman who shouldn't even have got pregnant at 14, can't even call her woman a child, gets pregnant and delivers her own baby in the middle of the night. And while delivering the placenta, she soils the only sari. She washes her sari in the middle of the night, puts it on the hut for it to dry, and is waiting for the sun to come out to wear it back again. So that hit me so hard, I felt like giving up and running. I said, this is not the life I choose. I can't take this. But then Vivekananda is Vivekananda. He said that I enter through a pore of your body, I'll never exit. That's energy I bring. And this is your shape your own destiny. So I felt that as long as there are Madhus like this in this country, this is what I'm going to do. And today, to cut a long story short, Madhi grew up, that she had a baby. That baby grew up, studied in my school. She became a mother, and she had a child and was delivered by my wife, an obstetrician in our hospital. The child had imperforate anus. A close friend, pediatric surgeon in Bangalore, immediately operated on the child, saved it, and they're all now joyful young adults. So when I look back, I felt that we can't allow this to happen in India. And so that's what led me to build hospitals, schools, be part of all this entire project of education, health, and one thing led to the other. And I interpreted development as providing access to all that. So that is the mainstream narrative of development itself. Doing that for 20 years, met the mobile units, science programs, all that you do, building toilets, homes, finding roads, fighting with the government. And still I find I haven't solved it. Something was missing, and I was feeling restless. I thought maybe public health, and I'm not understanding public health. Maybe I should get some more knowledge of public health, get a certificate program in public health. I felt that's also not enough. Then I thought maybe I don't understand management. Maybe the problem in India is that we don't know how to manage stuff. So I got an MPhil in health systems management, but it took me for some time. My ego was satisfied for some time, but I still found that this has come back. I thought everything that could be done has been done. Schools have been built, colleges have been built. Why am I not solving the problem of human development? Why are tribals the way they are? Why did the state bring in laws which call them poor and then say I'll do anti-poverty for them? So this anger, this confusion led me to try to do different things, and I thought maybe I haven't discovered the answers yet. So let me go to the mecca of development learning. Let me go to Harvard. I went to Harvard with my program there, did a fellowship there. And then I realized even Harvard didn't have answers for me. But what I still credit Harvard for something extraordinary. While it might not have answered the questions I was burning with, it gave me more ways of asking questions. It reframed the way I could ask questions of myself. And then I suddenly discovered the answers were all embedded within me, my experiences and the knowledge I had gained from community wisdom. That is when I started writing my books, either Citizen or Voices from the Grassroots or even Leadership Lessons. Oral reflection is extraordinary community wisdom embedded in man. And that is when I figured out development is not the roads, homes, and cars. Development is all about people, and that's what Vivekananda said. Suddenly I discovered all answers are in Swami Vivekananda's message. He said, building people. That's what Swami said. He said, what we need is make lions out of them, build people, invest on people. And I realized India has been doing that for generations till we got colonized and shifted the narrative and started the economic pathway. What India had done was invest heavily on building human and social capital. And there were powerful economic consequences. And that is what civilization in this country was famous for. We were the greatest country in the world, largest GDP for nearly 1600 continuous years, not because we want to grow the GDP, but we built the people who could build the GDP. So for me, development became a constant expansion of human capabilities. For me, development is a constant expansion of human and social capital. And human capital, for me, I define it from my understanding of Swamiji. And from this message, very simplistically, I said it's a constant expansion of the physical. We take care of this body. Swamiji says the body and serving the body is important. The physical, the intellectual, the emotional and spiritual capabilities of a person, which will give a person the agency to lead and sustain life. And that is essentially what Swamiji's message is also, what the Upanishadic message is. And then that's what we all do, finally, I expect. But to me, tribal development became a today the Vivekananda Youth Movement designs and delivers on projects across Karnataka, touching the lives of close to 3 million people. More than 800 people full-time working on this. Average age would be 28, 29 years of people working here. And I think that is the message we live with. We really believe that if we invest on building human and social capital, it will have powerful economic consequences and a resurgent India. And it's not just tribal development for us. It's about human development itself. And conviction in the power of community wisdom, I think, will be the game changer. We have to start trusting our people. We got to trust our poor. We cannot believe that the poor don't know what they want. We cannot say that I know what the poor want. Neither the state has that power and authority to say it, nor any NGO or anybody else. We'll have to say we will co-discover the problem with our people and we'll co-solve it. We'll co-create a solution. And that sense of working with people emerged for me at that point. Till then, I was working for tribals. And that's when I realized that they know much more than what I did. I realized that I'm working with them. I bring some resources to the table, to the organization I represent. The state brings its own resources, but people bring their resources. And only when you combine and synergize together, then real problems get solved. And looking back today, the capacity building commissions the Prime Minister conceived of. And he keeps talking about this, and that's why it gives me hope. He keeps talking of Jan Bhagidari. In everything he does, he says citizen centricity. Citizens matter. Every single Indian matters. He talks about the state not being a provider, but state actually being a partner with the citizen to co-create India. He said all of us are part of Team India to build a new India. And the new India call that Swami Vivekananda gave us exactly that. So I believe that, that spirit of the partnership comes from, and I can be useful because those convictions of experience that I gained learning from communities and their wisdom sort of prepared the ground in me intellectually and emotionally also to do what could be done today.
That is so beautifully stated there. I have goosebumps literally when I heard the Mada's story. I think in lot many ways a reflection of what has been done and what more needs to be done for the country to move forward. And couldn't have been a better segue than this, Dr. Balu, is the next topic around leadership development. I know you have kind of been very passionate about developing leaders. Makes whole lot of sense after hearing you out saying that nation building, capacity building is at the heart of building the people, growing the people. So from that standpoint, if I were to ask your own journey in terms of leadership development, what are the key leadership lessons that the listeners can take away from your own journey and start implementing it? Second piece, what I'm very, very interested to hear from you. I have heard and seen you articulating the 3H philosophy. Would love to hear the 3H philosophy from you.
You see, most of us, the moment we talk of leadership, what really we most of us intuitively or conventionally understand is about being a leader. And Vivekananda says it so beautifully. He says it's about being and becoming. So the becoming is different from being. And so it's not, so therefore I also believe that I don't believe in the noun form of the word leader. I don't think anybody can become a leader. I think all that we can do is begin to exercise leadership. So it's an activity for me. It's an activity of mobilizing oneself. Because most of the time we can't even control ourselves. It's an expression of enormous control of inner nature that Vivekananda calls, the internal nature. And expressing control over external nature, that internal nature and the power of internal nature manifesting itself for the power of the good of the outside world. So to me, leadership is about understanding the self, understanding others around us, and the actions that binds the self to the other. And embedded in this understanding is selflessness. It's a selfless action for the benefit of others. Societal, positive, constructive action that we need to all engage in. And the Bhagavad Gita says about acting without looking at consequences. To me, leadership is exactly that. It's mobilizing oneself, mobilizing all the resources around us, all the others that you can use the word others, all for doing something societally constructive. But doing it despite knowing that there's enormous uncertainty. You may never succeed. Doesn't matter. So you are set up pregnant. You are equanimous about both success or failure. And it's very difficult to really inspire yourself to do that. So to me, leadership is that journey. And therefore, embedded in the understanding of leadership, I call it as being leadership itself being a spiritual journey. So in this entire spiritual journey, you exist to always think of the other and constantly explore how can you be more useful. And like Gandhi said, can we lose ourselves in the service of the others? And if you can do that, I think that is a journey of leadership. And I would see it as not something intensely personal, but being impersonal enough to constantly think of the other. Like, and Vivekananda says so beautifully in a letter to the Mysuru. He says, the vanities of life are transient, but he alone lives who lives for others. The rest are more dead than alive. And if you reconstruct the statement, there's so much of meaning in it. One, it's the awareness of the vanities of life are transient. The illusory nature of life, the maya of life. I'm not claiming that you are the doer. Embedded in it is the understanding of that awareness, the mindfulness. But more importantly is a sense of celebrating life, the vibrancy of life and the manifestation of life in the service of the other. And then Swami also says it's so nice, and to me, it aligns with the leadership literature today. Now, leadership literature talks of three very critical things in leadership. First is having motivation. You got to be inspired. It's emotion. Second, it's about strategy, thinking of what to do. And third is about action. So leadership is all three: motivation, strategy, and action. That's what modern business schools teach. But look at what Swami Vivekananda said hundreds of years ago. In fact, he used the word servant leadership even before it was part of the leadership literature. Greenleaf in the 1930s used it first, and then 60s Harvard used it. But Harvard gets the credit. But Swami Vivekananda used it in 1890s. And he said should lead like a servant. He should do servant leadership. He used the exact word. And in that he says, have the heart to feed. He said, feed my children, feed for the poor, the marginalized, the downtrodden. That is motivation, that's emotion, that's the heart. And the next head, he said, is the head to think. That is strategy. Just simply don't get inspired to do something and jump into it. You may want to save some person who's drowning, and you may forget that you don't know swimming yourself. And if you jump in to save that person, you are also going to drown with him. So he says the head to think. And third, you must be out there to save him. We use the head to think and put a stick. We bring a stick to reach out to him and pull him ashore. So that is action. You got to act also. The heart to feel, the head to think, and the hands to work. This is exactly what leadership is all about: motivation, strategy, and action.
And I'll top it up with one other statement that I read about Swamiji. His leadership is also about being present by being absent.
Yeah, I write that in my leadership book, and I said that is when you discover that we always start looking at ourselves as somebody who becomes indispensable. We start thinking that, you know what, without me this world will not run, because we confuse leadership for position of authority. And then in the exercise of authority, we start believing I am really important, I have to be part of this. But real leadership is actually being present by being absent. When we can reach that state, that high level of awareness, I think that is a spiritual evolution that I speak about, leadership being a spiritual journey.
Super. So we've been with Dr. Balu talking a lot about self-inquiry, reflection, his work in the capacity building stuff, leadership, so on and so forth. We are not done yet. We are slipping into a segment in Inspire Someone Today, which is called as the Power of Three round. There's a set of questions for everything. There is three quick or sharp answers around that. So with Dr. Balu, we have an exception that there's no quick answers. We would love to hear his anecdotes. We would love to hear his deep meaning around some of this stuff. The first of the Power of Three round is 3 stories of winning against odds through your life journey.
When you're 19 and you are sort of founding an organization, people don't have faith. I've had people saying that this fellow hasn't even got a mustache. What can you do? And then you start, all that you have is power of faith and renegotiating people's appreciation of your life. And the reinforcement I got that there's a higher power with you and you don't have to worry was, we were building this hospital at Kingsnelly, and those days I used to wear a dhoti and sometimes be in a banyan. And I would, if you look at me, and today's world generally thinks that doctor must go to be quit into a doctor. You don't speak English and you're not well dressed, you think you're not a good doctor. So I was standing while construction was happening, the dirty dhoti and the banyan, oil all over. And the car, those is a Maruti 800 car. Even a Maruti 800 car, those is, oh my God, some rich man's coming. So a young man with his wife came rushing in and said in English, broken Kannada, he was trying to articulate things. I heard there's a doctor here, there's a doctor. And he looked at me and asked me, where's the doctor? And then I also answered him in Kannada, I am the doctor. And that he was taken aback and didn't accept it. I said, no, I want the doctor. Then I thought, okay, now I have to talk in English. Then in crisp English, I told him, well, I am the doctor and you can be rest assured I can take care of the doctor. He had actually lost his way. Coming to Kingsnelly is little, there's a road which forks after Sri Kota. One road takes you to Karapur, Jungle Lodge, the other road comes to Kabini, and that's the road he taken the wrong road, the fork. And his child, I think, wanted to pee or something, and while doing it, some insect must have bitten him in the bushes, and he had allergies developed. The 3-4-year-old child, he came running to me and said, my son is full of rashes and is itching and something's wrong, can you help? So I looked at him with a simple allergy, some insect bite. So I just gave him an antihistamine, and then the child was fine in 3-4 minutes. This guy was very impressed. Then he started talking to me and said, what are you doing here? And then he was finally convinced I must be a doctor because his child's itching had come down and I'm speaking English now. So I said, we are building this hospital. So my story started, and then he came from Chennai, and he had a showroom of Bajaj. It was called Hex Automobiles inside Africa, on Mount Road. He introduced himself, then he said, I just came with my wife and child to the Jungle Lodges. We lost our way, came here, and that's what I'm doing. And I said, and coincidentally, that was a Friday evening, and I didn't want this guy to go away. I said, I have a lot of thinking to do because next day I had to pay around 2,700 pages. We started building the hospital with no money, and every Saturday would be labor payment. And I was wondering, how will I make this payment? And I was saying, this guy is a nuisance. I've taken care of his son. Why don't you go? But then he was asking me everything, and then he said, well, I came for this holiday, but I don't have a checkbook, and those credit cards are not. I have some money. And I said, whatever I can give you without, that extra I brought, and he gave me 2,800 rupees. Now, I only needed 2,765 or something. So all our existence is 38 years now. We never got more than what we deserve. But we never got less than what we need also. So that shows that there's that higher power which knows what is necessary for the next step. So this is something which has been so powerful for me. And Swamiji says it so beautifully. He says, and it's a lived experience for me. He says, you never get what you don't deserve. You can never be given what you don't deserve. And nobody can take away from you what you rightfully deserve. And that's true of the organization too. And, looking back at great lesson that the challenge of finances is addressed by its own mechanism. Though we always feel we don't have money and how do we get it and all, we go through all those pressures. But deep down, I know money will find us when we need it. And that's the reality of 38 years of existence. What more proof of the pudding? And very satisfying moment for me has been challenging the state, the power and might of the state, getting beaten and arrested, all that I've gone through. But finally succeeding in convincing the state that rehabilitation should be on the terms of the people. Fighting for the rights, getting their rights restored by the National Human Rights Commission, getting India's constitutional mechanisms to actually work and succeed, and getting the entire cabinet to be fair to the then Chief Minister S.M. Krishna, who I challenged him and said, I'm not going to get tribals and bring them to Vidhan Saudha to discuss settlement. If you're really serious about settling tribal problems, you come with the cabinet to our forest. And we must appreciate the greatness of that person and his entire team at that time, Advocacy, then Chief Minister Secretary Mr. S.V. Ramnath and others, who actually had a cabinet meeting. Historically, the first time in the country where it was outside the state capital, in the forest with the tribal chieftains, discussing tribal development and how to resolve the issue of rehabilitation and to implement the Human Rights Commission's orders. So that was something which is extraordinary for me. And there have been painful moments. Like I used to, they had started the school, 28 children in the school, no food. I would come to Mysuru, I would have a bag. I would walk up the shopping street in Mysuru called Devarajas Road, go shop to shop, ask for some whatever the people would give, put it into the bag and go back in the evening. And one shop, I don't want to name the shop for protecting his identity, he would regularly give something. And one day I think he was frustrated or angry or whatever happened to him. He said, you're a doctor, aren't you ashamed to beg? I have he had a cellar. He said, I can give you the cellar, I'll set up a clinic here, earn your money, and buy the rations and give it to the tribal children. Why are you begging it? It's a nuisance to me. I was hurt. I felt that what the hell? I felt like giving up. I said, this is not the life I chose. And so I think it's something like I was not mature enough to even understand what Buddha said. You don't accept what people throw at you as criticism, then it doesn't belong to you. But it's nice to hear it as a story. But when you have a lived experience where you humiliate yourself, when you're 24, 25, you feel that what the hell? I could go abroad and earn money. And I check to some organization. But then subsequently, my Guru Achalanji, the story I don't want to relate now, lack of time, but restored in me the conviction to see everything as an opportunity to grow and evolve. Use it as a spiritual segue for growth. And that is when I realized that these are challenges are going to be. But when you convert it and not see it as a problem, but an extraordinary opportunity which nobody else is privileged to have, to rediscover yourself, rediscover your convictions, and still go ahead in life. And I learned what Vivekananda says. He says, for that, this kind of work is in being English, the way he used English and was proficient in that. It's a unique 3 P's for this kind of work. First, he said, is purity. You're absolutely pure in thought, word, and deed. Second, he said, you need enormous patience. And the third, he said, you must persevere. We have purity, patience, and perseverance will succeed. So I think these experiences reminded me those words actually are mantras for social work.
Cool. 3 practices that are unique to Dr. Balu.
I possibly am my own watchman, my self-reflection and being my strong critique and constantly trying to say, when did I sleep? Every day I sleep. So that's exactly why I need to be a watchman all the time. I sleep, I remind myself, before going to bed, I sit back and say, how many times did I sleep today? And I measure my life as every time I sleep less and less, I must be then realize knowing. The second practice is just love everyone. Vishwa Prema is only way forward. And when you love everybody, that's the beginning of Seva. Without Prema, you can't have Seva. And whether it's people working with me, it's whether my colleagues in the Vivekananda Youth Movement, or the Capacity Building Commission, or anywhere, or the tribals, whom I love very I cannot even describe the kind of affection and love I have for the people of Earth. And be a lifelong learner. The day you stop learning, like Ramakrishna says, so much deep meaning in it. He said, as long as I live, so long do I learn. And Brahmajnani, like Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, says that, what about mere mortals like us? So I think being a lifelong learner means a lot. Every opportunity you can get to learn, every conversation, every question you ask is opportunity to learn and figure it out yourself.
So wonderful. I think for somebody who has accomplished so much, that humility and that eagerness to learn, stay curious, is something each one of us can definitely imbibe. 3 things the youth of this world should focus to make the world a better place.
I think young people have to realize that they can't keep waiting for a messiah to come and wave a magic wand and change the world. They got to believe in themselves. They got to be the change they want to see. Today's world is a world of powerful opportunities as much as a world of complex problems. So we want solution providers. We don't want people who can complain and sit back. Believe in themselves is the first message I would give. Believe that they have the future. Believe that they are the solution providers. Well, many of us might be, our generation might have been the problem creators for them, but they have to be the solution providers. Today's society is saddled with 3 major crises that they are inherited. We are given them an ecological crisis of unimaginable proportions. We are leaving them behind with the socio-economic crisis, enormous inequities in life, and more importantly, the youth of today are going through enormous self-crisis. They have lost their identity. They can't figure out who they are. Highest number of suicides are in the youth of today. Believing in themselves is the way to the first message I would give. Second message is, don't imitate, but reflect. You don't need role models. You got to be your own role model. Hey, Krishnamurti says, be your own guru. Hold on to the messages of great people, great mentors. Be guided by it, but not blinded by it. That's the power of the Bhagavad Gita. That's the power of messages of Vivekananda. Take their message, live by it, but don't be blinded by it, but be guided by it. Third is, faith in God is never misplaced. Today, God has become a commodity which is more vertical than it. So I think just have faith in yourself and faith in God, and you'll never get misplaced.
So very true. And this would be amiss if I don't ask you. I'm sure you would have tons and tons of insights coming from your coaches and mentors all through your life. If you were to pick 3 of those insights that has made a difference to you, what would those 3 insights be?
And I would say a combination of Swami Vivekananda and Suresh. You already mentioned, always think of the other. Whenever I would have a problem, he said, okay, this is your problem. But what about the other? How does he see it? That's what Suresh would ask me. And so constantly think of the other, something I learned. Second message again said this, just live your purpose. Trust in God and live your purpose is what Swami Vivekananda would tell me. And third, he would say, never stop to reflect. It's reflection which actually unleashes the hidden inner power that's inside. Deep contemplation, meditation, and reflection. And so these are the 3 powerful messages I learned from my mentors. And if I can call, these are the 2 great people. And I've had several mentors in their own ways, but somebody whom I can call the guide, somebody whom I can call who shaped my life. The most important mentors and coaches in my life have been these 2 people.
The last of the part of 3-round question here, Dr. Balu, which is, you are a prolific writer, you have authored quite a few books. If I were to pick one, because a lot of the listeners out here are also citizens of this country, we are celebrating the 75th year of independence. Hence, I want to call out something from your book, which is I the Citizen. If there are 3 insights for the listeners to pick from I the Citizen, what would that be?
The first message I would say is democratizing development is critical. Democracy is not just about elections and voting and participation and engagement. Democratizing development, and I write about it, so I believe it as that. Just this message of democratizing development. Second, I think investing on human and social capital has powerful economic consequences. And we need to do that on our own self. All of us have to keep investing. The third message from that book is, the poor know poverty in the West. So let us not pretend to tell them what poverty is and how to alleviate it. So they know the problem, they have the solutions. Trust in them, have faith in them, work with them, never for them. And I think that is what is dignity of development. That is what is seeing people as equal. That is what is partnership all about. And so partnering for progress is far more necessary than working for somebody, telling I'm helping them. I think that's real. That's when we make progress. So I think the three, if I can just pick three messages from either citizen, I would use these.
Wonderful. Co-creation at the heart of everything. Moving on, currently, Dr. Balu is associated or is working with the Prime Minister's office as part of the Capacity Building Commission. So my question to you, Dr. Balu, is what is it and what does this mean for the future of the nation?
I think this emerged from I think a deep sense of conviction as well as a strategic vision of the Honorable Prime Minister. A couple of years ago, he felt that we need a really future-looking Team India to build the new India that he was visioning for the country. Whether it is a $5 trillion inclusive economy, whether it is Atmanirbharate, or whether it is using of emerging technologies, or making everything for the citizens' ease of living. So he felt that existing models of public administration may not fully satisfy the needs that he was demanding of people and wanting people to deliver on. And he also felt that public administration is not about being a public servant. Attitude should be of a public servant, but you got to go beyond that. So in his language, he said, how do you get people to stop thinking they're just mere... I think the whole concept of the Capacity Building Commission came from the Prime Minister's vision of how to build a new India, where he genuinely believed that this country needs every Indian to participate. And that's what he calls Team India. So he says the 1.4 billion people have to be part of the system which actually works for this country. And calling himself the Pradhan Sevak, he said the attitude Seva Bhav. And Swami Vivekananda talks about it so beautifully. He says the two national ideals for India should be Seva and Tyaga. And drawing inspiration from our civilizational ethos and from the Karma Yoga, the Prime Minister felt that we need to create a bureaucracy which can actually be future ready and be built to deliver on the vision that he's contemplating, a $5 trillion inclusive economy that every Indian is taken touch with. The Antyodaya concept, Atmanirbharata is a lived experience rather than just a slogan, where citizens' ease of living matters. Where that's what governance is all about. Reduce government but increase governance and make sure the citizen's life is better, whether it's ease of living or ease of doing business. And how do you deploy emerging technologies? And we're seeing all that now in GPT and that. But the bureaucracy has to actually gear itself up to do this. And you got to see it in context. When we got our freedom, India was a country which was steeped in poverty, and we had actually lost out the battle in GDP, and we're just 2% of the global GDP. And so we were a poor nation, let's say 50 million people, most of it living in poverty. So India had to necessarily prepare itself and its bureaucracy to be a provider. We had to take care of our citizens, to be a very welfare driven and provide. The skill sets of our civil servants was to provide. But 90s, when we privatized or we globalized, etc., suddenly we said no longer it's about just providing. Not that we gave up providing, but it is also about provisioning, creating marketplaces where people are participating and start provisioning for themselves. So we moved from providing to provisioning. And it's not just a paradigmatic shift, it also has to mean a shift in skill sets and mindset of the bureaucrats. It took a decade for them to learn that. Today, the Prime Minister has been talking about partnership, Janbhagidari, which is again a completely new paradigm where we say that we are all together responsible to build a great country, which means the civil services have to be empowered and built to trust citizens and not see them as just mere recipients of welfare, but co-creators of progress, which is a big ask. The mindset of the shift. So the behavioral competencies have to be grown. So he sees them not as karmacharis. So he says people should not see themselves as salaried employees or as karmacharis, but operate the seva bhava and say, I have become from a karmachari to a karma yogi. Now, you as an ordinary citizen walking into a government office, more often than not, they all experience people telling us, we can't do this rule doesn't permit it, as per the rule, only this can be done. So he says, that is disturbing the ease of living. Citizens don't feel that the state exists for them. It's always looked at that we create barriers for them. So he says, our mindset should move from being a rule-based, not that rules are not important, you need rules for governing. But he said the attitude should not be about, or the approach cannot be rule-based. It has to be role-based. We must see that I exist for the citizen. I exist to make ease of living for the citizen. I exist to build this country and its progress. And shifting yourself from a rule-based to a role-based. So building capacities in India's civil service ecosystem, in individuals, in the institution as ministries and departments and organizations, and the whole of government itself. So this approach of whole of government, how do you de-siloize, how do you build this, how do you build policy change for all doing all that, and how do you look at the supply side of capacity building, how do you look at making capacity building it is demand driven, keeping the future in mind, understanding work, the future of work for the nation and public administration, redefining the workplace, that is reducing government but increasing governance, and investing on the worker and building his capacities, his behavioral competencies, his functional competencies, and his domain competence to deliver to new India. I think this vision of the Prime Minister is what created the Mission Karma Yogi. The Capacity Building Commission, which I'm privileged to be a part of, is as a member of the Human Resources to look at all this, is to deliver on Mission Karma Yogi, that consider the heart and soul of it, and to deliver on looking at how you enable the 40 million civil servants across India, both in the government of India and all the state governments. And just the immediate phase one of the government of India itself that we're working right away is now 3 point. And then the next level and the next level. So eventually the commission would work with every single public servant of the country and make them to deliver on these national aspirations set by the Prime Minister. I personally believe that this will be the legacy of the Prime Minister and be a game changer for this country. And will redefine how public administration. And we must all be proud that no country has tried out an institutional framework of this magnitude, taking such an approach ever. Now, this is the first country in the world which is doing it. And at someday we'll possibly have a Davos kind of an event, a global HR summit, where these things will be shared with the rest of the world. And truly we'll also be part of the Vishwa Guru that Vivekananda spoke about, the Prime Minister speaks about. And taking these messages to the rest of the world to give them ideas how they can all make the world a better place by the models that India creates for.
This is truly exciting and exhilarating to see what the future for the country holds. And in lot many sense, this is also the theory of change at work at a pretty massive, broad country level. Right? So something like this to succeed, to accelerate, and you are also the forefront of public policy framework as well. So what do you attribute for something like this to kind of succeed, to kind of deliver on its mission?
I think the first is the enormous strategic and visionary leadership the Prime Minister himself provides for the reporting to the Prime Minister and to the Human Resource Council, and the political will and the conviction that he believes in building capacity. So for him, it's a lived conviction that people and their capacities constantly should be. He's the kind of person who says, I, as the Prime Minister, need my capacities to be built out. You cannot get a more humble and open person who believes so much in lifelong learning, because Mission Karma Yogi's mandate is lifelong learning. And it draws his energy from the way the person lives as a Prime Minister. And I think that matters for success, because finally it's not just a program, it is a passionate conviction that his personality gives us the inspiration or charisma. Second is, we as a system, I have been recognizing this now years since I joined the commission and it's been operating. I think there's inherently every single public servant I have met, despite the stereotype that exists in the outside world, actually want to be different and do more. I've met such extraordinary people. Obviously, there are mediocre people, like in every segment of society, the corporate sector, civil society, every sector has mediocrity. But the joy is, there are such extremely well-qualified, well-meaning, seriously intending people in the public administration system of this country. And that's what gives hope. And highly qualified people, the IITs and IIMs, and who really believe they can change India. And we're open to this kind of inputs. So I think that is something which is going to make it succeed. And the third and most important is, people are willing to now explore how they look at citizens not as subjects, and being more open-minded towards that. My Bop attitude which governments traditionally had is now moving to, because there's no choice. Everybody understands that you can't be doing this all the time. You've got to get it done through people. And I think that is something which is growing stronger. So to me, it is this newfound energy, not just in people. And last and the most important to me is, I think, the youth of this country, who are not going to be satisfied with status quo. The restless generation are going to demand that we go transcend mediocrity and take this nation forward. And that pressure, both on the political executive and the bureaucratic executive, itself will make people change and accept it. So I think a combination of all the good things falling in place today. So we are at the right time in history. We are at the right point of time. And so to me, it's exciting because I believe I'm privileged to be positioned in this place. Like I said, it's always destiny. To contribute what I believe I've been prepared for the last 4 decades.
How wonderful that is.
Yeah, and so this is something which it will be something which will become a game changer for India's future.
So in lot many ways, in close quarters, you're seeing the unveiling of being a leader to becoming a leader. What does it look like to see the Karma Yogi at work? And is it true? What we hear from the press that the Prime Minister doesn't sleep or he kind of works non-stop for 18-19 hours a day. He sets the tone for the rest of the team. So you're witnessing all of this in close quarters.
I would simply say I would consider it an extraordinary privilege to be working with somebody and for somebody who is passionately devoted to the cause of building a great India. So somebody who lives, breathes, and sleeps building a nation which we can all be proud of, building a nation where every Indian is included, building a nation where poverty is something we speak in our history books, building a nation where the Vivekananda dreamt about the Mother India on a resplendent throne, being the Jagat Guru, the Jagan Mata for the rest of the world. So when you see somebody who passionately believes in it and actually acts on it, I think it's an inspiration for all. And it sort of keeps you going all the time. And what more can you ask?
I think we are all living in exciting times, looking forward to that. So like I said, couldn't have been a better time to have this conversation with you, celebrating India's 75th year of independence. Dr. Balu, this has been a masterclass of sorts to kind of quote back Swamiji's words, man-making, character building towards a resurgent India. And that is what you kind of walked us through this entire length of the conversation. Before we wrap up, like I said, this podcast is all about creating ripples of inspiration. What is your Inspire Someone Today message for all of our listeners?
It's so difficult now that you are asking this question. I would just say what Vivekananda said: faith, faith, faith in oneself, and faith in the fact that India will be that Jagat Guru that the world is waiting for.
And we all have a role to play to take India to be that Jagat Guru, the world leader, world teacher, so to say. It has been an absolute privilege to have a conversation with you, Dr. Balu. Thank you so much for taking time and sharing your words of wisdom with me and all my listeners. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening into today's edition of Inspire Someone Today. It's been a privilege to bring in these conversations. If you like this episode and have any feedback or comments, do mail me at inspiresomeonetodaypodcast@gmail.com. Inspiring someone is like creating ripples around us. If you like what to listen, feel free to share them and let's create ripples of inspiration. Do not forget to follow me on my Instagram handle @InspireSomeoneTodayPodcast for all the latest updates. This is Srikanth, your host, signing off, and until next time, keep inspiring.